Like if you like. You know?
That's who you are. You're the little white fingers.
There are some times when a joke ends up being more private than public. And, you know, I made that little comment, a little joke about feeling like a lump of clay, or, you know, when you feel like a lump of clay. And what I want to acknowledge is I didn't, like, explain the whole thing because I didn't think about it. It just came to me. It's not the energy or the light you shine on me that breathes life into me. It's my decision to be alive in your presence. And I'm thanking you. And yeah, you love me big. And you shine lots of light. But you know, I could sit up here and I could actually block that. I could ignore that. I could just rely on who I am in here and be self-sufficient. You're my excuse to remember. You are my excuse to come alive. You're my excuse to choose to be more than I might be were I not in your presence. So thank you for that. Thank you for turning me from a lump of clay into a happy boy. You turned me on. Right. So it's going to be one of those days, guys. You know, I could let you all off the hook here and we could have an early fellowship time because when we were up at Miracle Mindedness this morning and Betty Lou says, "Can I tell them my summary of your talk this morning?" Sure. So here's what Betty Lou said. So you get the summary first. She said, everything you experience is because you value it. So shift your values and then shift your experience. And the third thing she said is our job is to be aware of what we value. So thank you very much, Betty. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's really good. The whole topic today is values-based living. And so now that you know kind of the bottom line, I get to kind of talk about it. And it doesn't matter if I make sense or not because you got the message. So values, I mean, I had to look it up, because I know values, all that kind of stuff. But the dictionary defines value as the degree of importance given to something. Which means, by the way, there is relativity in that. We can give more value, we can give less value. So remember, that's your power to do that. The second definition I like, a guiding principle. So a value is a guiding principle. What one deems to be correct and desirable in life, especially regarding personal conduct. So that made me feel good. So I went back and I looked at Jesus, who we use as an example of all kinds of things, good, bad, and indifferent. But today we'll look at some of the good things that we can project onto him. But it was real clear that Jesus had really two core values. His primary value was to love God. His secondary value was to love people. And you know, we refer to this, we go to the Bible, and he said in Mark 12, he said, one of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating, and he asked Jesus, of all the commandments, which one is the most important? And the most important one, answered Jesus, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second one is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Now, because Jesus was really, really clear about who he was, and very, very secure, happy being who he was. And also, you might say he was pretty well connected. Okay? And I don't just mean this whole Son of God thing, but I mean the connection that we all have, but he really knew how to do it. He knew how to tune in. He knew how to listen and follow. And because of those two things, being secure in who he was, knowing who he was, and really being well connected, he was extremely consistent in living his values. So pretty much everything that he said and did through his whole life, through his whole ministry, was all about love God and love yourself. Now, when we hear people touting the values of values-based living, because there's a lot of that around, usually what's happening is they're saying what you really ought to do is value the things that we think are important so that you can live in a way that we think is good. We do that to ourselves, don't we? We say, I ought to value this, I ought to live this way. And certainly we get plenty of that in the world. So most people, when they talk about values-based living, are talking about the things you ought to value. Now, for most of us, our values are really, really subjective. What I value, what you value, is based on our history, is based on our experience, it's based on our culture, it's based on the current conditions in our life right now, it's based on what we have and what we think we need. Therefore, our values are going to be absolutely, totally unique for each and every one of us. There isn't a right set of values. Now, the good news is you can have more than one set of values. You have permission. It's okay. See, there's a lot of bad rap that's been given to having these conditional values or situational values. But isn't it true that in some circumstances you have this set of values and in other circumstances you have that set of values? I mean, different things are important to you when you're out in the middle of the desert versus when you're in a rainforest. And different things are important to you when you're in the middle of a city or when you're out in the country. And different things are important to you when you're in a community that feels really safe and loving versus when you're in a strange environment that may not be as safe. Now, the other thing that's kind of fun is that we have egoic or personality values, and we have our spiritual values. We have a fun process that we do. We sometimes do a workshop. We've done it here, I know, before about values clarification. But in one, I actually made up a sheet, a list of all kinds of values that we could think of possibilities, and blanks to fill in your own, by the way. And we had people go through, and maybe you've done this, but you go through and you choose what your highest values are, your highest ideal values are. And that's easy to do. Oh yeah, it's love, it's friendship, it's community, it's serving, it's freedom, it's creativity. I mean, we all have our own sets of values. That's it. Stage 2 is go through that list again and say, okay, looking at my life, what's it look like I value? And I will guarantee to you, those are two somewhat different looking lists. Sometimes your top 5 ideal values don't even show up when you look at how you're living your life. I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. Lady Lou said this morning our job is to be aware of what we value. She didn't say our job was to figure out the right values and stick to them. So, I'm not really saying to you that values-based living is the thing you ought to do. You guys need to live a values-based life. What I'm actually saying to you is that you are always engaged in values-based living. It's already what you always do. So if that's true, why do we even talk about values-based living? What's the value in talking about values-based living? Well, nothing really if you think that there's one set of values that's really, really true and important and we need to spend our life trying to live to those. By the way, that's a prescription for failure and disappointment and pain. You know, it's a little like driving with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. It's like, get this jerky experience. And that's because we have a mixture of values. And we never really know for sure which values are driving our life. Our job is to observe the course we're taking. And infer the values that must be being expressed or sought. And then, by the way, we're in a position of being able to take responsibility for our experience. Course in Miracles. I love quoting from Course in Miracles because for me it's just really bottom line, no nonsense stuff. By the way, this is a great little promise. So use your mental note taking here. This section here in Course in Miracles in the text says, there is only one thing that you need to do for vision, happiness, release from pain, and the complete escape from sin for all that has been given to you. Only one thing you need to do. All right, I'm listening now. Goes on and says, say only this, but mean it with no reservations, for here the power of salvation lies. Here's what we're to say. I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve, and everything that seems to happen to me I ask for and receive as I have asked. Wow. Now, it goes on to say, deceive yourself no longer that you are helpless in the face of what is done to you. Acknowledge but that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. Bottom line, simple Robert synopsis. If you're experiencing it, you're asking for it. If you're experiencing it, you value it. Gandhi said, action expresses priorities. What you do says what's important to you. So, everything that we do and everything that we experience reveals what we are currently valuing. Or at least what some part of us values. And by the way, when we're in the middle of the yuck of our life, it's certainly not our conscious choice of values that's being expressed, but some part of us. So I'd use a real, I think, practical question. When I'm experiencing something I don't want to experience, I got to ask myself, what thoughts must I be thinking to be experiencing this? Another way to say it is, what must I be valuing to have this be the experience that I'm having? You see, it's in there somewhere. Again, not conscious. The good stuff, you bet. I know exactly what I'm valuing. It gives me all this love and appreciation and community and all of the good stuff. But when we're really in the middle of it, ask yourself that question. What must I be valuing, or some part of me valuing, in order for me to be experiencing this? Sometimes it helps to ask the question, whose values must I be holding to be experiencing this? Because they're not always yours. You know, we learn this stuff. So we have a world that teaches us. Shoot, we started out with parents that taught us. So whose values must I be living by in order to be experiencing this? Now, once you've asked those questions and answered those questions for yourself, do not, and I repeat, do not sign up for 5 years of psychotherapy.
Too late.
So don't re-up. That's all. Just don't sign up again. Go back to Course in Miracles. I just read it to you. Very, very simply, the last line says, acknowledge but that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear.
Yes.
That's forgiveness, guys. That's Betty Lou's definition of forgiveness. Eraser filled with love. Whatever it is that I was believing, I erase it. Leave only love. Whatever value I seem to be holding, erase it. Leave only love. Whosever values I adopted that aren't working for me right now, erase it. Leave only love. So let's say that you have some role models in your life. And let's say that you want to be like Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad. You want to live a life that really is expressing the values of unconditional love, for instance. What I want to tell you is that does not mean that you have to go out and learn about love. You don't have to study it. You don't have to figure it out. Go back to Course in Miracles for a minute. In the very, very introduction of the Course in Miracles, it says, this course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. You cannot learn how to love because you are love. What happens is we've got some filters in the way. So the good news, guys, because we are always living our values, we have constant feedback from the world in relation to our experience. I mean, how cool is that? Even the worst experience that you can imagine says, oops, I got a mistaken value. I got a value in here that really doesn't serve me anymore. But it will show us what we're thinking, what we are valuing in that moment in time, so that then we can remove that obstacle so that we're left just experiencing love. One of the biggest lessons that we share in any of our healing classes is awareness without judgment is healing. Just notice it. Don't judge it. Just notice it. If it's good, it'll stay. If it's not good, another choice will be made. It's the judgment that gets you stuck. Awareness without judgment is healing. Awareness with forgiveness, that's just another way of saying it. Being aware of it, just erasing it, leaving only love, opens us up to seeing and being love and light.